So, what are some of the changes that we've seen when it comes to media buying and traffic generation over the last year, year and a half, and what you need to do about it? That's the topic of what we're going to be talking about today. And so, I'm back with none other than John Mulry, the legendary traffic generation wizard, or my secret weapon, at least for traffic generation and media buying. And so, first and foremost, what's up, John?
What's up, Todd? Super excited to be here again.
Yeah, man, excited to pick your brain. So on our last call last week, we ended up talking about economics, and we talked about kind of the first and foremost, we talked about the three prongs or the three legs that you kind of focus on when setting up campaigns, optimizing campaigns, scaling campaigns, all that. So we talked about the media buying side of things, how you set up the platforms and the pixels, and of course the ad copy, the images, all of that. We talked about the importance of the marketing side, or we just touched on the marketing, which is the landing page and beyond, and everything that gets said and presented and shown and done there. And then we talked about the economic side of things. And we're not going to go back into the economics. Folks can watch the last week's episode or video, whatever you want to call it, to get that gist. I think that it was an amazing call because I think that it really highlighted for folks how important understanding the economics are, how this is really an economic driven game. It's a numbers driven game. It really, like, look, you can't fix bad economics with great marketing and great media buying, right? Like you'll never, you gave the example, I think last week of, if you're paying $10 a click and you're selling a $7 product, it doesn't matter how great you are at media buying, doesn't matter how great you are at marketing. It is never going to work. And so, again, for folks that missed that, you can go back and watch that. Maybe I'll see if we can figure out how to post the video somewhere up here so that you can click the link, or maybe in the
The
description.
fancy
How about
stuff.
that? In the description. That's easy. In the description, you'll find a link to the prior call. So with that being said, let's jump in, man, and talk about, and I'm going to kind of turn it over to you for a bit. I want to cover what's changed, right? Because I know that, we've had numerous conversations really over the past year just about the changes in the media buying environment, changes tactically, changes strategically, changes to the platform themselves, changes to expectations in terms of economics, changes to what's working and what's not working. And so let's start. I know that we're not going to cover everything on this particular call as it relates to the changes, but why don't you give the first change that you've seen, man, over the last year?
Yeah, so there's been a number of bigger picture changes, like wider thinking changes around media buying in terms of the platforms and everything else. And then we've seen a lot of platform specific changes. So I think if we kind of talk about the bigger picture changes first, and then we go into some of the platform specific ones, because there's
Cool.
certain things that are hindering people, and there are certain things, certain changes that are certainly going to help a lot of people as well. So I think talking the bigger picture first and foremost, and then diving into the kind of nuances to each platform, I think might be useful.
Love it, man. Love it. Roll with it.
So, like, bigger picture, like the biggest changes that we've seen in the last, say, 6, 9, 12, 18 months or so has been like the onslaught of AI, but not like how people are thinking, not in terms of like ChatGPT AI and Claude AI and using like AI copy platforms, like not so much using AI in your ads or anything like that, but in how the massive amount of development that the platforms themselves have invested in AI. So like Facebook, for example, they've invested something like, or are investing something like 33 billion into AI, specifically in helping their algorithm get better at matching up advertisers with potential buyers and everything else, matching up the news feed with what people want to see and are interested in and everything else. So like they're investing heavily in AI, which like for us as marketers, initially when people think of AI, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get ChatGPT to write my copy. And whether you do or not, or whether that's a good idea or not, is not what I'm talking about at all. It's about the massive big infrastructural changes that these platforms have been investing in, that what changes how we as media buyers should be setting up and running our campaigns. Because say, for example, just to kind of dive into like a specific example with say Meta or Facebook, call it what you want. We've kind of started calling it meta now because it's like what it's actually called. But like when it comes to meta ads, whether that's running ads on Facebook or Instagram or whatever the case may be, in the past, like we used to follow, say, a very particular type of campaign structure for setting up a new campaign, for optimizing and for testing and everything else. We had to follow a set structure. And in the past, with say Facebook, a lot of people could probably testify that when it comes to scaling campaigns on Facebook, it was very much a case of like trying to game the system and trying to trick Facebook into getting you the result that you wanted, because you might have like 20 campaigns, and each of those campaigns might have 5 to 10 to 12 ad sets, and each of those ad sets might have 5, 12, whatever amount of ads. And it was an absolute nightmare to manage that whole process, on top of trying to optimize your funnel and dial in your economics and everything else that we kind of discussed last week. Whereas with the big changes with AI, say specific to Facebook, that process is now a lot more streamlined. So like the advantage of being able to pull certain levers inside of a campaign, they're no longer the competitive advantage that you have. The competitive advantage is more so all of the other things that we discussed last week. So like, just to give you a perfect example, the Advantage Plus targeting inside of Facebook is incredible. And that's basically all AI targeting. And it's essentially, to simplify it, is that in the past, we may have had, may have targeted certain ad sets. So basically, just to kind of give a quick overview, the structure of a Facebook campaign from start to finish is we have a campaign. Within that campaign, we have ad sets, and within those ad sets, we have ads. And then that's kind of the overall structure. And in the past, we might have had a individual ad set might be targeting a particular interest. So let's say, for example, someone has an offer in the email marketing space. We may have one interest targeting the Infusionsoft interest on Facebook. We might have another ad set targeting, say, the MailChimp interest. We might have another ad set targeting the overall email marketing interest as a whole, which is these are targetable interests in the Facebook ads platform. We may have another one targeting people interested in the interest landing page, and so on and so forth. Like each ad set will be an individual interest. And then those interests would have certain audience sizes, and we may be able to get results out of those or not. We test those off each other. Now it's a lot simpler to set up the campaigns, because we can use the Advantage Plus targeting. And what Facebook is doing, and Google are doing the same thing, but we'll talk about Facebook specifically, is based on your ad copy, based on your landing page copy, based on what your video is saying, and based on all of the other assets around your funnel, your offer, and everything else, Facebook is scanning all that information and then using the Advantage Plus targeting to match up your offer, your whether it's a front end offer, whether it's like a lead gen offer, whatever it is, to match up that with the right people. So we no longer have to play the whack-a-mole game of like going down the rabbit hole of testing 50 audiences and all this kind of nonsense. We can use the Advantage Plus targeting to streamline that process, which means if you do have your economics dialed and you do have a sin offer, like we would call it, it makes the process that much easier. And then it's the exact same for they've now, like, we have an Advantage Plus placement. So then it'll not just show to the right people, but it'll show them the right type of ad that they're used to converting on. So if Advantage Plus placements, let's say there's certain people in your audience that are just all on Instagram and they're very rarely on Facebook, Facebook is going to show them Instagram ads and not show them Facebook ads, because they know that that's the platform that gets them to convert. Like, that's the bigger change in terms of AI that I see in advertising. And it's very much less so about let's use AI to write our copy for our ads and let's use AI to do everything else. I mean, sure, you can do that. And we've seen somewhat okay results with that, somewhat poor results. We haven't seen groundbreaking shifts with using AI in ads like that, but we have seen groundbreaking shifts in actually using AI the way the platforms want us to use AI.
Yeah, and it really makes a lot of sense if you really think about it. I mean, and number one, right, is that the platforms are just getting smarter and smarter as it relates to targeting, as it relates to the ad type, right? And they're only going to become that much smarter over time. And so, right, it makes sense that eventually they're going to be smarter than the smartest media buyer. In other words, so the one who's trying to pull all the levers and who's trying to figure it out, like, right, Facebook's got all the data. Just using Facebook as an example, Facebook's got all the data. They got the algorithm that, right, has been collecting data for years and years. They've got a monster amount of data, and now they've got AI that is doing the processing to make sure that ads are wildly effective. And so, it sounds like, John, and correct me if I'm off the mark here, but it really sounds like if you look at the three legs, the media buying becoming being really, call it, an expert at media buying, specifically like the platforms and all the targeting and all the stuff that you just went through. Looking at the media, that is becoming and will become less important over time. And what will become even that much more important is the marketing side of things, as well as the economics. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and like the being able to understand and make decisions on the data that you're seeing as well. I think like that's because a lot of people we can, you can, oh yeah, like the Facebook and Google to a certain extent, not so much Google to a certain like as much as Facebook because it's a little bit more difficult on Google, but like Facebook make it really, really easy for you to set up a campaign today. But that doesn't
Right.
mean that it's easy to scale a campaign today. But like they make it easy to set up and what makes like what makes scaling a campaign an option or an actually a viable option is in the iteration, is in knowing where to optimize and what to optimize, what to change, what lever to pull within those things. It's not necessarily of, oh yeah, just set up the campaign. It's a lot easier today to set up the campaigns because like there's like I was on a call with our team earlier on today, and what I said to him was that it's never been easier for us to reach our clients' market, but it's arguably harder to connect with them because of all the noise and everything else. So we have to work extra harder with like creative to stand out and with create with our offer to ensure that we have the right type of offer that these people want and a unique way of solving their problem and all those things that we talk about in the E5 method because it's so easy to reach your audience today because chances are either there's audiences there's pre-built audiences that we can target or we can just use the AI to target them and the AI knows how to reach them. So reaching your audience is not an issue. It's all the other pieces that are arguably more important now today than ever before.
Yeah, I love it. To me, as a marketer at my core, right? It's really an exciting time, and it's becoming more exciting because the advantage when it comes to online advertising is really now it's shifting again. And what I mean by that is that there was a period of time even 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, where in order to have effective ads, in order to effectively use paid traffic, you not only needed to understand economics and marketing, but you needed to understand the platforms and you needed to understand the intricacies of the platforms. And what happened is over time, right, when Facebook advertising first hit the scene, or when Google, like AdWords, first hit the scene, it was very simple to get started. And then over time, it became much more complex, much deeper, as there were so many different options, right? And it kept a lot of the typical entrepreneurs and marketers out of the media buying world because that was something else that they needed to learn. So they either needed to learn it or they obviously needed to go to somebody who was really hyper skilled in that particular area. But now, thanks to the evolution of the algorithms, thanks to AI, it's going back to the media side of things being much simpler and easier to get started, which is now shifting the emphasis, the importance back to really understanding the economics and understanding the marketing, understanding how to get attention with unique, compelling, fresh, different ideas, different hooks, different perspectives, right? Understanding how to really grab that engagement with good copy, for lack of a better word, a great offer, a great argument, all of that kind of stuff. And so as marketers, it's shifting the game. It's making it easy again to get set up with ads, as long as you understand that focus on the necessity of the focus on the marketing side, and the economic side. How about let's go into another change. And I want to bring it back to something that I like to keep things super simple. And so how about let's bring it back for 1 second to what about, you know, what about cost? The cost of media today. I think, the right, tell me, correct me if I'm mistaken, but we've seen a substantial increase in media costs and the cost to get a visitor across the board in the majority of markets, verticals, and niches. Is that right?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah, we've the costs have definitely been increasing. Yeah.
And so, I mean, like, look, right, supply, demand, all of that. But I think that, right, what it does, again, not to revisit the topic that we talked about, on last week's call, but right, it really makes it that much more important that you do play an economic game and you understand that economic game when it comes to your funnels, because there was a time where the cost of media was so inexpensive that you didn't have to have the upsells, the bumps, the downsells. You didn't have to have those transaction maximization offers dialed, right? It wasn't so essential to have that campaign thoroughly optimized. But today, because the cost of media has increased, right, that really then warrants the average order value to increase. And in order for the average order value to increase, right, you either need to change price on your core offer and or have dialed transaction, maximization offers, upsells, downsells, second chance offers, all that kind of stuff. So is there anything else that you would say to that? Or I mean, that pretty straightforward that, like, look, cost has gone up, therefore you have to take measures to increase the value of a buyer, right? And the way that you increase the value of a buyer is changing price points and or transaction maximization offers and or having a dialed back end and using a portion of your back end to subsidize acquisition. Anything else that you would add to that?
So I think like maybe one or two things I would add to that is that like there are still spaces where and industries and niches where we can like where cost is less of an issue. But we're talking like but like competition is still quite high in those spaces, but in the mass market niches, like cost is less of an issue in terms of with the like when we have the right elements in place. But one extra caveat to that is that we can get like because and it's nearly leading on from what I said about the AI and the algorithms getting so smart is like if we if we optimize for any other events than what we want, we can drastically reduce down our costs, but we're also sacrificing our results. So to give you a perfect example is that we can optimize for landing page views and we can get our cost per click super, let's say in the digital marketing space where cost per click maybe 2 or 3 years ago might have been in the $2 to $3 to $4 range, maybe less. Whereas now our cost per clicks in our purchase campaigns, which is what I'm getting to, maybe five, six, seven, $8 a click. So like it really depends. But now if that's running a purchase when we're optimizing for purchases, now when we're if we take back a conversion event and either say optimize for leads or say even back further and optimize for a landing page view, we can get landing page views for probably less than $1 a click. But the algorithms are so smart, they know people who click versus people who buy. And I like obviously we're in the game of generating revenue for our businesses that we're working with and for ourselves. So we want to make sure that we optimize for the event that we want. So when we're running a campaign to a front end offer, say where maybe we're selling like a $97 product or whatever we're selling is, we're optimizing for purchases. We're not optimizing for add to carts. We're not optimizing for leads. We're not optimizing for landing page views because if we do optimize for those things, we will get those things at um the loss of the actual thing that we want. So we'll
Yeah.
probably get very few, if no purchases, but we'll get tons of clicks at a super low cost, which is not worth anything to anybody. So when we optimize for the event we want, because the algorithms are so smart and because everybody else is doing that as well, like our costs are sky high. So
Yeah.
people, there's people out there that'll say, okay, oh yeah, this is great. I'm getting 10-cent clicks or whatever the case is. And you can nearly guarantee that they're not getting the purchases that they want or whatever the case may be. But when we optimize for purchases, yeah, absolutely. Or we're paying a premium on our clicks and we're paying a premium on everything else because the algorithms are so smart and they know the buyers versus the non-buyers. They know the video view people versus the purchase people. So the days of running campaigns where we would warm people up by running a video views campaign and then retarget them to purchase, like those days, I'm personally in our own agency, we've rarely seen good results with that type of a strategy. Where we see better results when we optimize for the event that we want, which is a purchase, or if we want to generate, if we have like a really strong lead follow-up campaign or offer response campaign or whatever the case may be, sure, we optimize for leads at the beginning, but once we hit like critical threshold on purchases, so to give it like a concrete example, so for one of our clients we have been scaling pretty aggressively. Initially, when we started the campaigns, all of the campaigns were lead generation campaigns because we wanted to get leads through the funnel because it was an evergreen webinar funnel. So the first conversion event was to opt in to watch the evergreen webinar. So we wanted to get critical mass on leads. Then once we reached a sufficient number of purchases from that campaign, we switched the campaigns over to optimizing for purchase. If we optimize from purchase from the beginning, we would have had to burn through a lot of cash to get the amount of data we needed to get the critical mass of conversions. And that critical mass of conversions is typically anywhere from 100 to 200 conversions of, like, say, a purchase conversion that Google would have enough data or Facebook would have enough data. So to kind of bring it back is like costs have increased, and like, sure, there's certain things you can do to reduce your costs, but you're going to reduce them and also sacrifice the event that you want, which is like purchases and everything else.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that's so great. I'm so glad that you shared that. It really goes back to just a foundational lesson that we've talked about, for years now at this point, and it is really understanding the business that you are in, and really ultimately, like you said, optimizing for the end result that you want, not optimizing for a particular step or stage. And this really requires that entrepreneurs and marketers really recognize that this is all about a game of investing. And so when it comes to investing, there are really two sides to the equation. There's the cost and then there's the value. And you can't assess whether the cost is good or not good or bad, cheap or expensive, without understanding the value side. And you can't determine or judge the value side, whether it's good or not good, whether it's adequate or not adequate, without understanding the cost side. And so you always need to look at both sides of the equation when you're making decisions. So, like, look, 10-cent clicks, for somebody to ask, are 10-cent clicks good? Well, out of context of understanding the value of those clicks, you can't answer that question. 10-cent clicks might be great if every click is worth 20 cents, 30 cents, 40 cents, or 50 cents. But 10-cent clicks might be terrible if every click is worth zero, right? Whereas a dollar clicks, maybe a dollar click, right? Like, look, is a dollar click a click better than 10 cents a click? Well, maybe if those 10-cent clicks produce nothing and those dollar clicks produce $2, in revenue. And so the reality is that you always need to look at cost within the context of value. And so I'd much rather pay $5 a click if every click led to $6 or more. Really, if every click led to $5 or more, I would take that rather than dollar clicks that led to 15 cents return, right? I'll take the $5 clicks that allow me to acquire customers at break even every day, all day, over the dollar clicks that are only bringing me back 10 cents or 15 cents for every click. And so it is critical that you remember that you're an investor. And as an investor, you determine the value of an investment based on your return. And so you need both of those numbers. And so I love hearing you talk about this idea of optimizing for the end result that you want, even though it may lead to higher costs. It will typically, when the other elements are in place, lead to a higher return. And that's ultimately what you're after. It's why I tell everybody that I always bring everything back to what's the cost per acquisition, customer acquisition cost, and what is the average order value. And right, like, I don't care about anything else. If I'm breaking even really on a campaign, if I'm spending $1 and I'm making back $1, if I'm spending $5 and I'm making back $5, if I'm spending $20 and I'm making back $20, right? That's what I care about. That's the investor mentality. And so any final words that you would add to that, to this little discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of like bringing it back to like we see ourselves when we're working with our clients, so we're investing on their behalf and we're investing in the acquisition of assets like you always talk about. And like speaking specifically to that, like one other thing that we have seen in terms of a big change is that it is getting, because of the increasing in costs and everything else, it is getting increasingly harder to operate at the definitely the mom and pop level of acquisition aggression. Like that's as we talked about last week, like that's extremely difficult right now. But even it's getting harder and harder to work at that break even level. Especially like if people think that they just have that one funnel that they're gonna like break even on day zero, like sure it can be done, but it's more often than not, it's brutally hard to get to that point. It's not a case of, oh yeah, we have this funnel and it's breaking even. It's like, no, there's a lot of iteration, there's a lot of optimizing on both ads and marketing side to get there. And it's getting increasingly harder. And I think in the future, it's going to be even harder again because of everything that's happening in terms of higher costs, more competition, the platforms getting easier to use with the AI and everything else. And like it's just going to make it even more difficult in the future to do that, which is why we're probably going to see a shift towards the businesses that really survive are going to be the businesses that can go negative for a certain period of time in the future. And like I think that's where we're going to be in, like I would say in the next 6 to 12 to 18 months, unless you can go negative for a period of time, scaling aggressively with paid ads is going to be something that you'll struggle with.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that this is such a, it's such a valuable conversation to have, because I think that, this is often ignored. It's often, not talked about because it's not the exciting, hey, spend $1, make back, $3 day zero kind of conversation that people love to have and people love to talk about. But this is the reality, right? This is the real raw truth of what folks need to understand about today's media buying environment. That the reality is that this is the ease of use of the platforms. It obviously is going to bring more advertisers, right, which is going to continue to increase the cost of media in the majority of markets over time. Like, look, in the majority of markets where there is value to be reaped, right, the natural trajectory is that media costs always increase. They don't decrease. As things become more and more valuable, the cost increases. And that's why we've seen that with platforms. And that's why we're going to continue to see that with platforms, which means that it's becoming even more essential to, number one, understand the economics of the game that you're playing, right? This direct response game, understand the role of economics, understand the investor's mindset. And as well, it's becoming critical that you optimize the marketing side of things, not just the conversion rate of the core offer, but the additional transaction maximization offers, the bump, the upsells, the downsells, the second chance, the thank you page gift offer, all those things that we've talked about, that maybe we'll talk about in some future on some future calls, as well as lifetime value, as well as the back end, as well as the second purchase, the third purchase, and the process and flow of that. Those things are becoming more critical. And understanding the economics, understanding the numbers of the economics, understanding the importance of optimizing average order value, understanding optimizing the back end for lifetime value. This is ultimately what it means to play the economic game, right? This is ultimately what it means. And those that understand and play the economic game are going to be the ones, from my perspective, that thrive or continue to thrive with media buying, right? Like that's the reality, right? As the platforms get easier to use, marketing and everything that falls under that umbrella, as well as the economics, become that much more important. And so I love it. How about let's take just a little bit more time to cover what else have you seen change over the last 12 months?
Yeah, so I'll give two examples. They're all based around the one example. It's around the creatives on the platform. So like on Facebook, we've certainly seen a shift on in creatives and how we approach creatives in terms of when we're creating them for our clients and where we're mapping out what we want to do and everything else. And likewise on YouTube as well. Obviously, YouTube is specific to say video, but Facebook we have a combination of text, image, or video together and everything else. But like some of the like tactical things that we've seen is like and this is something that we picked up from Rich in Steeler Winners, and like we've tested it ourselves, and we kind of look back at our own campaigns that have worked really well. Is say specific to video on YouTube, like the keeping the attention and keeping the engagement is so key, and even more key than it was in the past. So like any videos that we have on YouTube, if we look at like a normal video, normal talking head style video where we're just talking to the screen like this with very little animation in our hands or very little head movement or anything like that. We're just talking like this versus a video that does have animation in our hands, that does have a bit of head movement, does have graphics overlaying and stuff like that. The video with the movement vastly outperforms the static video. Just because it's keeping the brain engaged, it's keeping everything else engaged. And we've seen that the longer we keep people watching a video ad, the better the ad performs in terms of click-through rate, and the better the ad performs in terms of, or better the rest of the actions perform as well in terms of opt-in rate, in terms of completion rate, and everything else after that. The more engaged we keep people. So in terms of video creatives, that engagement is super, super key. It's no longer just good enough to do a video that is like a really polished script, but you're just talking to the camera and it's a really, like, for lack of a better phrase, boring video. We need to keep that engagement there because we're up against YouTubers that edit the wazoo out of their videos and like they're super engaging. We're up against other people that have like, you know, fancy equipment. I'm not saying you need to have all of that stuff, but that's what we're up against. So like taking the little bit of extra time to think through the editing of your videos can go a long, long way. It could be just as simple as making sure that every single one of your videos has the captions burned in, because like we've also seen that videos with captions versus videos without captions, that I can't remember the exact statistic, but something like 64% of conversions come from videos that have sound off but captions on, because people could be watching a video ad while they're in an Uber. They could be watching a video ad while they're on a train and they don't want the sound to play or whatever the case is. But when there's captions on, they can still get the gist of the message. So tactical things like that on the creative are super, super important, which like comes back to like not having the understanding of what you need to do on those elements, and like the AI side of things of the algorithm changes not going to really impact those, but when you have that understanding, you can turn a normal video into a powerhouse video and get that much better results.
I love it. You know, I think I would bring it back to, again, in my very simple, you know, mind, I bring it back to what Joe Sugarman really popularized, the idea of the slippery slope in copy, in written copy, right? And you know what most marketers tend to think about when they think of the slippery slope from Joe Sugarman is they think about the first sentence or the second sentence. You know, they've heard Joe Sugarman talk about like, what's the job of the headline to get the first sentence read? What's the job of the first sentence to get the second sentence read? And usually that's kind of where they stop in their thinking, right? Like I want to create this slippery slope to get people to read the copy. But the reality is that this idea of the slippery slope is really used throughout the copy. They're always thinking about, how do I get the prospect to continue reading? How do I get them to continue to be engaged with this written word? And you can take that same kind of strategy of the slippery slope, and you now need to incorporate it into video. And there are different ways to create that slippery slope within video besides just words. There's animations, there are words, there's images floating across, there are, you know, changes in angles, there's movement, there are things that you can do to continue to have that be a slippery slope, so that we never want to give them a reason to disengage, or we never want to not have a reason for them to remain engaged. And so it's just another way to really think about the you know, what you're saying and how you're saying it and what's on screen and movement and changes and all of that. And so very cool. Well, I don't want to keep you any longer than promised. I want to be respectful of your time. I so appreciate you, man, jumping on for another call. I was looking forward to this call. I'm super excited that I've got you for the foreseeable future once a week to jump on and talk through these things. And so for, to wrap up, so I think we've got it on the screen somewhere, but if somebody wants to learn more about how you can do their media buying for them, how you can help with the marketing side of things, the economic side of things, all the stuff that you're a freaking wizard at, where do they go?
They can simply just go to e5agency.com. So the letter E, the number five, agency.com, and they'll be able to see exactly how we can help them and everything else, and they'll be able to schedule a call there if they see so fit.
Dig it, man. Awesome. Well, thank you, brother, for another amazing call, dude. I love picking your brain, man. I love understanding, learning how you think about media and traffic generation because you're on a next level, and the results that you produce for us and your clients, man, certainly echo that for sure. And so cool. Have an amazing day, dude. And I'll talk to you next week, man.